Here we are. Sorry for the interruption. We had a technical problem. Here we are back. I'm Carlo Levi Minzi, classical pianist. Don't forget to ask your friends to subscribe to my channel. And I hope that by doing this, you can not only listen to my music, but also to appreciate classical music in general. We were talking about Johann Sebastian Bach, and we were at the point when he played in presence of the Emperor of Prussia while he was paying a visit to his oldest son actually, who was working for him. He improvised on a theme of the Emperor of Prussia and eventually composed a bunch of pieces which are known as the musical offering. Of course, they were after to the Emperor of Prussia. But what is interesting in this fact is that when he was there, he saw instruments, pianos, built by the same man, Zilberman, who had shown his instruments 21 years earlier. This time, he changed minds and started considering this thing. And in fact, if you look at the writing of the keyboard music he wrote this time, you find out that it's different from the one he was writing before. So he had started understanding that the world was changing and also instruments were. So the Rechercar in three voices, which is the piece which is for the keyboard instrument, seems to be the first piano piece, and maybe the only one which Bach wrote. A very important piece, a masterpiece by the way, and this is basically the only Bach piece I play. The reason is self-evident. It's the first piece written for a piano rather than a harpsichord. And it's different. The writing is different. Unfortunately, I cannot show the whole thing here, but you can go back and listen to music like the Well-Tempered Clavier or other composition written earlier by Bach himself, and compare this with Rechercar in three voices. You can listen to the Rechercar in three voices here in my YouTube channel. You can find it. It's the only Bach piece you find, so you cannot make mistakes. And is interesting because this piece has been performed, is a live recording which I made in a concert I gave in the United States in 1987. The instrument is an historical instrument. Of course, later is an instrument built almost 100 years later, after 90 years after Bach's death. And but nevertheless, the quality of this instrument is quite different from what you hear now with the modern pianos, and goes closer to the quality of the instrument Bach could experience. For this reason, I like to perform on what we call in our slang, we call the period instruments, because they are closer to the quality and to the compositional idea. In fact, in my life, I have played many concerts on period instrument. I have played Beethoven on instrument of his time, Mozart on instruments of his time, or at least copies of instrument of the time of Mozart. And I will publish more of this soon. So, but this was the last big show that Bach gave in public. He went back to his town, went back to his work, but because of an eye problem, he had got something which could have been solved very easily now. He got cataract, which was a very easy disease, and he was operated by one of the first eye doctors of the time, a British man by name Taylor, who was very famous. But unfortunately, the operation went badly, and Bach found himself blind. And lived the following 2 years until his death in 1750 in a condition of blindness. So he had to dictate his music to his sons and to his students. Also, his wife, second wife, was a musician, Anna Magdalena. So he was dictating the music, but unfortunately didn't succeed in completing his last big work, The Art of the Fugue, and died in 1750. By the way, the same accident occurred to a contemporary of Bach, a man by name Georg Friedrich Handel, and this man, who was German-born but living in London, and was the same kind of musician, organist mainly, and he had the same problem. Cataract, operated by the same surgeon, became blind, and had to live in a blindness state for the rest of his life. But nevertheless, Bach has been one of the biggest, of the most important, most relevant composer of every time. And I invite you to listen to my performance of the Ricercare in Three Voices, not only, but to listen to Bach. You can find a lot of it on the various YouTube channels. And what else? So we are now completing our Bach story. And this is one of the most important composers. Thank you, Sayuri Isha, for joining us. And once again, we are so many. Please tell your friends to subscribe to my YouTube channel periodically. we'll have a period. We will meet periodically. I'll try to talk about. We will try to talk periodically about music, trying to tell you something about what I'm doing and what is music is, and trying to make you approach to this good music and to appreciate it. My wife says that there are different kind of musics, and this is true. And she claims that the music she hears is equal to mine. Hi, Capit Lang, for joining us. And actually, I can demonstrate this is not true. There is good music and bad music. Thank you, my sponsor, Akavi TV. Thank you, Tinik Jenica, for joining us. And thank you, Websoreg, for joining us. The fact that there is a good music and bad music was very well known in history. I always like to talk about an ancient Greek philosopher by name Plato, who lived in the 4th century before Christ. This man, who was maybe one of the most relevant philosophers of the Greek civilization, of the ancient Greek civilization, wrote a big book whose title is The Republic. And he talks about how an ideal republic should be. In book number 3, he talks about education and emphasizes on the importance of music education for the youth. And he says that there are 3 types of music. The strong music, which make you grow and become stronger. The nice music, I'm freely translating what he wrote in ancient Greek, is the nice music, which is typical lyrical and gives you a good feelings. And finally, the 3rd kind, which is the bad music, which leads you to deprivation and to bad habits. The so-called pop music belongs, of course, to the 3rd kind. And you can find it if you go to the discos and find what happens with people listening to this horrible music. And then also, this music is quite often associated to the assumption of illegal drugs and misbehaviors of various kinds. Hello, Websoreg again. Thank you for joining us. And this is the reason why I say that actually the classical music is the inheritor of what Plato used to call the strong music. And what is called in Greek diastaltic music. And of course, because the reason why is this music is quite complicated and force you to think and to follow the construction. Also, people who are not educated, they can have an intuition of what, and this causes emotion, creates some emotion in your mind, and at this point you realize subconsciously realize that there is something which leads you to reason. One American epistemologist once said that music evocates the power of mind. And that was what Beethoven said in a different way. Beethoven said that the music is the deepest revelation of philosophy. That means that is the deepest way, the unconscious way of going into reasoning. This, of course, refers to the strong music, not clearly to the music which leads you to take illegal drugs or to go to discos and dance in a way which I think we don't want to see and to listen to. This is the reason why I say that there are different kind of music, and that the good one cannot be compared to the bad one. We talk about Johann Sebastian Bach. Now we go to talk about the other. We were celebrating Bach birth anniversary, which occurred on March 31st. Now we talk about Johannes Brahms, whose death anniversary occurred on April 3rd. Johannes Brahms was basically mainly considered the last classical composer. Not exactly true, but he is the last of this tradition, which starts from Brahms, the so-called Middle European tradition, and goes through Mozart, Beethoven, Schubert, Schumann, and Brahms is the last one. Brahms was German, as Bach was, and was born in Hamburg in 1833. That means almost 200 years ago. Brahms was himself the son of a musician, as Beethoven was, as many of them, or many composers were. Not the case of Chopin, not the case of Schubert, not the case of Mendelssohn. Nevertheless, Brahms was the son of a musician, a man playing who was making his living playing in cafes and even in worse places like bordellos, place where prostitutes were catching customers, etc., etc. So young Brahms had to help the father to make a living when he was 11, 12 years old, and was going with his father, accompanying him at the piano. Nevertheless, he had a relatively good education, and studied with good teachers in Hamburg. And in his early 20s, he started the career as a pianist, and was picked up by an Hungarian musician by name Edo Remeni, which was actually the pseudonym for Edward Hoffman, And this man, and he toured for a while with this man. This was not so important, except for the fact that Edo Reimini introduced him to another musician, another violinist, by name Joseph Joachim. This man, who was slightly older than Brahms, was already a very important man. And this man, who sponsored him and helped him they became friends, and they remain friends for life, introduced him to another very important man by name Robert Schumann. Robert Schumann was a famous composer himself. We will talk about him in the future. And this man was also powerful. He was the resident conductor in Düsseldorf, which is in Germany, in the central Germany. And was powerful enough to force publishers to publish Brahms music. So this was the beginning of the career of Johannes Brahms as a composer. Since then, his career was relatively easy. Later, he moved to Austria, to Vienna, where he lived for the rest of his life. He became also the artistic director and conductor of the Singakademie, which was the institution which later became the Wiener Philharmoniker, which still is one of the most important orchestras in the world. And he held this job for a couple of years, and later he left it, but remained in the board of directors. So he was able to have a word in appointing the professor at the local conservatory, the Wiener Musikhochschule, and therefore he could he was very influencing musical life in Vienna, and also became more and more powerful and more famous. So his career was somewhat secured. Brahms lived until 1897 and ran a career as a composer first, but also as a pianist, and also as conductor, as we saw. And he lived more and less as long as Bach, but he produced much less. Nevertheless, this music was very relevant for symphonies. He never entered in the opera world, and also, since he was not a believer, he never wrote sacred music, with one only exception, which is the so-called German Requiem. He wrote in memory of his mother, but was not a requiem intended as a mass. He took text from the prophets, but was you can easily say, you can tell, this is the work of a non-believer. Is a work of a very good man, but not a believer. Hello, Megastar. Thank you for joining us. Thank you, Limin Hugo, for joining us. Don't forget to tell your friends to subscribe to my YouTube channel. And we are talking about classical music. Thank you, Janvi, um, for joining us. Subscribe to this YouTube channel, and I hope you enjoy this, and I hope this makes you enjoy not only my music but also classical music in general. Now, Johannes Brahms wrote a lot of music, and I have on my YouTube channel, you have two samples. One is the Piano Concerto Number 1, which is a piece he wrote when he was very young, 26 years old. And the recording I made is a recording that is a live recording of a concert I gave when I was slightly younger than this. So it's not exactly what I would play now, but it's part of my story, and I like to, therefore I like to have it on my YouTube channel. The other, and it's a piece, as I said, of Brahms' youth. Brahms premiered this work, and the conductor for this performance was this violinist, Joseph Joachim, his long-standing friend. So, who had decided to conduct the premiere to support his friend, because his influence could help him in establishing this work. This piano concerto was not successful at the beginning, wherever. He played in various places. Hamburg, his hometown first, and then in the Gewandhaus in Leipzig, and in other towns. Was the piece at the time was not a big hit. Brahms was convinced that the piece was good, and said, one day people will like it. And as a matter of fact, it occurred. Brahms played it again, and at the end of his life, he conducted this and the other piano concerto he wrote. He wrote only 2 piano concertos, conducted with another pianist as a soloist, and finally audience liked also this first piano concerto. The second was a success from the very beginning. For this reason, I like to have this performance, this youthful performance. This performance I recorded very young in this live recording, so I like to submit this to your judgment. The other piece, which I have uploaded on my YouTube channel, is the other side, is one of his last pieces. In his last part of his life, he went back to solo piano music and chamber music. He, starting from Opus 116, he wrote 4 cycles of music: Opus 116, Opus 117, Opus 118, Opus 119. And this is the second piece of Opus 118. Is called Intermezzo, which means in the middle, and is one of the is a wonderful piece I like very much. And I played it as an anchor. As you can see, there was the orchestra there that night. I played second piano concerto, Brahms' second piano concerto, with my friend Giorgio Rodolfo Marini, who is listening to us. And I hope we will publish our performances soon. I played the second piano concerto with him, and this was the anchor I played. Thank you, Alert Moto and Jajako, for joining us, and thank you, Indai Kamia's channel. Thank you, Sura Asami, for joining to this live streaming. And once again, ask your friends to subscribe to this channel and to listen to good music and to be part of our club and to join. Was saying that Brahms wrote 4 cycles of piano pieces. His Opus 120 was again 2 clarinet sonatas. Looking forward to publish them soon. I have an old recording of mine with a famous clarinet player. It was a recording which goes back to some 30 years ago, 40 years ago, sorry. I'm old, my friends. And what else? And then he died of cancer relatively young on April 3rd, 1897. This is the story of Johannes Brahms, and I hope you are going to like this music. I have recently uploaded 3 pieces by a living composer, American composer by name Christian Burl, who is a good friend of mine, American, now living in Italy. And I'd like to talk to you about her. This is a completely different music, of course. And so let's talk about her for a while. Christine Burl was born in 1843, so she's almost 78 years old now, but looks much younger. And she had a manifolded life. She was born in New York as the only daughter of 2 musicians. Her father, Paul actually, the parents were emigrated from Austria before World War II. If you remember what I told you about Norbert Breining, the story was exactly the same. People forced to flee Austria after the German invasion. Paul Byrne was a pianist, and once in the States we had a position as a professor at the Mannes College of Music, and had a piano career. He became famous because he became the accompanist for a famous American singer by name Victoria de Los Angeles. And you can find his recordings on the YouTube too. The mother was a violinist, so she grew up in a musical family, and started studying piano with her father, and eventually she went to Mannes. Of course, that was his father's school. Mannes College is a famous, was actually, it does no longer exist. Mannes College was a school established by this violinist Leopold Mannes, and was a school where the Middle European tradition was preserved. Most of the professors were European refugees, people who left Europe during World War II, or even before, because of had the same story like Paul Burl, and in fact, where he found a job there for this very reason, as well as many other. Christine studied with the father, and then piano with Nadia Reisenberg, and had lesson of music analysis with Ernst Oster, one of the most famous theorists, music theorists. Then she studied also composition with various teachers, and started a career as a pianist and a composer, as many in the past. She eventually became professor herself at the Mannes College, and held this position for a while. At a certain point of her life, she had become very famous. Her music was performed by most of the prominent performers, not only pianists, in New York. She got a commission from Peter Zurkin for a piece, The Lord of the Dance. Peter Zurkin had commissioned music to 11 composers for a special program he actually performed in various towns. Other pieces were performed by other important pianists such as Emanuel X, Andrei Michael Schub, and others. Another piece for voice and instruments were commissioned by Frederica Forstade, a very famous singer, who performed it actually. So, just to tell you how famous was Christine Burl in the American, how important was her in the musical life, and he eventually became a professor at the Mannes College of Music. But at a certain point, around in the middle of the 90s, she decided to change life and left her position, upon the death of her mother. She left her apartment in New York and moved to Egypt to study Oriental dance. So she started this new career as a dancer and lived in the Middle East for a while, as well as in Italy. Her third husband was Italian, and they had a son who is Italian citizen. So she lived in Italy for a while. And decided to start this career. At a certain point, she decided to move. She divorced from this third husband, and she had married previously, and she has 2 kids, as a matter of fact, one from the second husband, and one from the third. This Italian one. She decided to keep living in Italy, and still does, and lives in a small village on the Mantis in Tuscany. And at this point, she started in her the third career, because since she found out that she could be a model for photographers, and she actually found a job. The photo you see in the YouTube is a photo which comes from a shot taken by a professional photographer, Hans Detmers, who is one of the many photographers she works for. So she found her third activity, which still does. She is now happy to have her music on the YouTube and distributed on all the platforms. And this is the story as it works. The 3 pieces you have on the YouTube are the only three pieces she wrote for piano. Funny, she's a pianist. She used to be a pianist, and wrote for only 3 pieces for piano, 3 piano pieces, which is very nice, and I like. So I like, after so many years, to be able to. And also, I am the only one who played the complete piano works, because Peter Zerkin played one only piece, the Lord of the Dance, which was the piece he commissioned. Elegy, which was the first piece she wrote, and was written in 1974 in memory of her father, who prematurely died that very year. And then, in the middle, she had written this piano sonata, Sonata Quasi una Fantasia, which was performed by André Michel Schub. Elegy was performed by the same Mr. Schub and Emanuel Ax. And I was the only one. I am the only one who performed all the 3 pieces. And this goes to the recording has been made in New York, in Merkin Hall, and I played the 3 works in one night. And this is what I hope you will enjoy. listening to this music, which is completely different from Bach and Brahms, but really deserves to be heard. And I will gladly, I invite you to listen to this to her music. The other composer we are talking this afternoon is another friend of mine, completely different character, an Italian man by name Massimo Ravazzin. You find his piano piece in uploaded on the YouTube channel. Also, Massimo Ravazzin had two careers, both in music, but very different one from the other. He was born in Verona. Sorry, in Verona is a town between very famous for the Shakespeare drama Romeo and Juliet, and for the theater, the open theater, where every summer the Arena di Verona is an open. This is an open theater where you have an opera season every year, opera and some big symphonic concerts. He was born in that town in 1951. The family eventually moved to Milano, where he studied at the conservatory. We met there many years ago. And he got 3 degrees, one in piano, one in composition, and one in band writing for band. And after serving to the army, which at the time was mandatory, I was lucky I skipped for physical reason, but everybody should go there. He spent 1 year in the army, as every young person in Italy at the time. Thank you, Liam Hoffman, for joining us. And don't forget to tell your friends to subscribe to this music channel, to appreciate classical music, and to follow my work. Massimo Ravazzin, after being released from his duty in the army, joined the Italian radio television, the national channel, where he was working as what we call musical consultant. Basically, those people are musicians who are helping in various extent. They have different duties. One is to secure a correct recording of concerts and operas, both on the video and the audio side. They choose the music for instance, for the news, for the video news. They choose the music for other different programs. So they are basically, they are very important in the production of in the television productions. They secure also the work of composers who are external composers who are invited to write soundtracks for movies, for the TV movies, etc., etc. So he worked with various people, very famous journalists, and worked to in production of soundtracks for many TV movies. He helped broadcasting operas from the main theaters in Italy, mainly La Scala. So he worked for live recordings as well as recordings of some material. And so he served served for Italian radio television for some 35 years, and eventually retired in I don't remember exactly. I think 1990 in 2013 or so. And apart from working for the television, he kept writing music. And you can find his own music not only on my YouTube channel, but also in his own channel, as well as different places on the YouTube. The piece I performed, which you can find on my YouTube channel, is a piece he wrote for me for a concert I gave in Rome in 1991. I was commissioned the program of contemporary composers. So I did exactly what Peter Zerkin did for the 11 composers for the concert that in which he introduced Christine Burl music to some audience all around the States. I commissioned music for this concert and performed this concert in Rome and eventually recorded. I have there are some music on my YouTube channel and some on different YouTube channels. This is the reason I like this piece very much. I have repeatedly performed in different places in Italy and abroad, also in Russia. So I'm happy to have this piece here. And I think you had better to listen to it. Because it's very difficult to explain. His music is very complicated, I must tell you. It's really complicated, but really the title of this piece is poem, homage to Scriabin. Scriabin is a very famous Russian composer. This is a composer we both like a lot. I studied when I went to Moscow to study. I told when I introduced myself to you, I told you that I was going to. I went to study in Soviet Union to learn how to play the piano. Not only that, I went there with another purpose, to study Russian music, and mainly Scriabin and Rachmaninoff. Scriabin was very famous in Italy at the beginning of the 20th century, even because he lived 1 year in Italy. when he ran away from Moscow, he left his first wife to run away with a student of his, and settled. At a certain point, he settled in Italy, not far from where I live, and lived there 1 year with this student, Tatiana de Schlözer, who eventually became his second wife. And thank you, Arvin Pagapong, for joining us. Thank you, Akona Naman, for joining us. Don't forget to tell your friends to subscribe to my channel and to appreciate classical music, and not only mine, of course, but everybody's music. You can find on the YouTube and on the main platforms such as Spotify, Deezer, Apple Music, etc. I was talking about Scriabin. Scriabin was very well known in Italy, but after World War II, his name disappeared from the scene for some reason, and I discovered this composer by accident. I fell in love, and I chose one piece of him for my final exam at the Milan Conservatory, and decided that once in Moscow, I would have tried to learn more about him and about his music. And this is what I did. Now I play all Scriabin's sonatas, and soon I will publish some Scriabin's music on this YouTube channel. I love his music, and I frequently played the complete cycle of the Scriabin sonatas in public. And I hope, if this damn lockdown is going to go to an end, I hope to be able to play in 2022 the complete cycle again. Scriabin was born in 1872, so we will have the 150th anniversary of his birth, and hope to be able to do this in 1 year from now. Massimo, who didn't study in Moscow, but knew his music very well, was writing this in a certain extent in his style. But of course, this is Massimo's style, imitating in somewhat Scriabin at the beginning and Ravel later, and has written this fantastic piece, which I invite you to listen to, and hope you will appreciate. Also, it's very interesting because Christian Burl and Massimo Ravazzin met years ago. They know each other, and they like their music. Just a few hours ago, I was talking to Christine Burl, and she said she asked me to send her greetings to Massimo, saying how much she loves this piece. So please listen to this music. Once again, tell your friend to subscribe to my YouTube channel, and to listen to the music of course, to mine, but also to somebody else and else's, and to appreciate classical music. I would really, this is the main aim for this YouTube channel, to make people appreciate classical music, to understand how important it is, as Plato said, for the people, for people's education, and for people's moral qualities, to make their moral quality grow. And so, thank you, Geoff Pelos, for joining us. And Geoff Pelos and Abogado ni Websoreg. Thank you for joining us. What else should I say? I have talked, my tongue is almost dry. I think we can call it for the day. 1 plus and another half hour before. Okay, so I would like to. I would like you to write some comments so I could answer to you live, but instead of just writing that you're here and are you? I know that they don't know, but you must start from somewhere. You must. This is an interesting feature. We can discuss this. This is very interesting. People are shy. They say, I don't understand music, so there is no point for me to talk about it.
You got 45 thumbs up. You say thank you.
My wife tells me that I got 45 thumbs up. Thank you, of course, for joining. But once again, I would like, I want to thank you for thumbing up, but
wait, my love, I take MJ phone. I still have there.
Thank you for thumbs up, but I would like you to write something we can talk about. If you have some doubts, if you have some questions, if you can say something. Also, if you want to criticize by way of explaining. I don't know anything about you, and I would like you to interact with me in order to allow me to understand what your needs and what I can do for you to make you appreciate music better. And this is very important, and it's very important for me to realize I would like this to be a two-way conversation and not one way. I am talking to you. I'm telling you stories and trying to tell you about music and about what I'm doing. But I would like to hear something from you, and to hear what your needs. What if you have any question, any discussion, anything, whatever you like, and whatever you like to do, to say, to know, to talk about, etc., etc. So this is the reason why I'm doing this. I told you I would like you to love classical music, not only mine, and I would like you to continue liking music and like to interact with you, as I said. Please don't be shy. Any question? Anything to say? Any kind of I don't hear a single word. No, I mean I'm not saying I don't see anything on the screen. I fear that okay. And so speaking about composers, there are so many. Many musicians tend to like various music and to play. Of course, there are pianists who tend to specialize in a particular repertoire, namely to play only German music or only Russian.
Yeah, you got 50 thumbs up. How many hours you like?
1 and 6 minutes now, plus half hour before.
If you don't plus the one, should be in your live. Shout out sa inyong lahat. Hindi ko pa alam kung kailan ako magra-raffle kasi I'm not feeling well. Yeah. Yun. Malalaman nyo na lang. Magra-raffle ako. Okay? I love music also, especially love song. It's different, the love song and classic music. Yan. Shout out sa 6 million viewers, of course. Ako na naman, kay Job Velos, of course, kay Abogado ni Babes. Ma'am Babes, miss you. And who else there?
Ako naman.
Wait,
okay. You see the difference between a pianist and a YouTuber.
Shout out
I am not a specialist.
Kay Arvin Pagapong, yan. Kay Remember Me, Jen V, Asmun, Liam, and who else? Rest Day, Gio-san, ay hindi ko pa nalisa si Gio. Si Tiny, si Charot-Charot lang, present ka ba at my wars? And who else? Linay, Sura, ay, Inday Kamyas! Mega love shoutout, sir! Ayan, si Inday Kamyas. Ngayon ko lang nabasa, Inday, na nang-judge ako. Alert mo to. Yan, Golden Life. Ayan, yung mga friend ng Hakabi, friend din ni Carlo Levi Minzi. Ayan. My love, what did you do in your face? Why got blood?
I don't know.
Next time, you must be careful.
No problem.
Okay, shoutout sa inyong lahat. Ilista ko po si Inday Kamyas. Inday Kamyas.
Yeah, I fear that we don't have
2 hours or more, you can make it.
Means 20 more minutes.
Yep.
Okay, let's go further. What shall I say now? Of course, it would be easier if somebody replied and asked something, because I cannot just talk alone. Of course, I have many things to say, but I don't want to start another topic since I want to use next time, and also because we will have more to talk about composers, things, etc. And one thing we could talk about again, in my live streaming number 2, I used to say how important it is to keep working, keep practicing.
Salamat, Ma'am Babes.
So keep practicing throughout years. Because you learn every single day. You learn about what you're doing every single day. Um, there is a very interesting anecdote about Pablo Casals, who was a very famous cellist, maybe the most important cellist of every time. Pablo Casals also was a great orchestra conductor. And I am somewhat linked to him, even if I have never met him, because he played with two of my teachers. He played with both Paul Baumgartner, my teacher of German music, and with Mieczysław Orszowski while in the States. Both Paul Baumgartner and Mieczysław Orszowski were students of Beethoven. More precisely, Paul Baumgartner studied with Walter Braunfels, who was a student of Leschetizky, who was a student of Czerny, who was an internal student of Beethoven. While Mieczysław Orszowski, who was older and lived much longer, studied with Leschetizky straight, and who was a student, as said, was a student of Czerny, who was a student of Beethoven. Casals played with both. There are recordings of him.
Please, my love, somebody comment music, like and share it. Is it your friend?
Who? Pablo Casals. I was talking about him. He's an old cellist. Was a cellist, a violoncello player. Thank you, music, for joining us. Pablo Casals was playing the cello and was like Frieder Bertolt. And I'm explaining to my wife what the cello is. She knows a cellist, and whom I played with. And Pablo Casals lived very long himself, lived till age 96. And he was a famous cellist, maybe the best, and played also with other important people around. As I said, Casals lived very long, till age 96. At age 93, he was still practicing the cello. Pablo Casals was still practicing the cello 3 hours a day, and he was 93 years old. Sorry. Somebody asked him why he kept doing this, and he simply answered, I am now noticing some improvement. And he was 93 years old and already had a tremendous career. You never stop learning. So we have to practice every day, hours, to improve, to notice some improvement. This is the reason why I like to keep practicing new pieces. And because you learn because in the music, there is good music and bad music. Plato was right. Sorry for my wife. And but the big music is one. There is what we call a red thread, which links all musicians one to the other. We will talk about it. Actually, what I can say from now immediately, and we will go back to this topic, the famous theme Frederick II gave to Bach to improvise on, and it became the theme of the musical offering, was used again by Mozart and developed in a different way by Mozart, Beethoven, Schubert, Chopin, Liszt. So that means that there are links between the composer. Liszt himself was a student of Czerny. And so there was a second generation of Beethoven school, and was a famous pianist, not only the famous composer, but also a very important pianist, one of the big pianists of his time, if not the most relevant. And was writing music which was somewhat in using this background. His piano sonata basically depart from Beethoven, whom, as I said, was a student of a student. Actually, he had met Beethoven in person when he was a kid. So, to study a new piece of any composer is a way to relate yourself not only to the composer, but to history of music. So you learn something on one piece, and this will reflect on the outlook you have about not only the composer's own music, but also to the complete repertoire. So it's to practice, to religious practice, so to speak, is very important in all respects. Casals was also was also a very had a very good sense of humor. Once Norbert Breining once told us, we are together, that Casals was supposed to play. He played. He died very old, so he played with different generation of musicians, and at a certain time of his life, he played. Regularly played with a pianist by name Alfred Cortot and a violinist by name Jacques Thibault. And they recorded also very interesting recordings of the trio music, including Beethoven, etc. The first time we played together, we were supposed to go to a place in the province in France and to play a very important programming featuring the most important Beethoven's trio, the so-called Archduke, and as well as the Schubert second trio, and I don't remember what else. In any event, they were supposed to be there early for rehearsal, since they had never played together. And but for some reason, the two of them, Cortot and Thibault, arrived on time. But Casals, who was arriving from a different place, was late because because of the train. So arrived basically for the time of the concert. So he was catapulted into stage. So he went there and met the two fellows who were stunned and scared. So he very calmly asked, "So, what are we going to play tonight?" Never played together, never played before. And they said, "This program." He said, "Oh, quite interesting. Very nice program." So basically, they played it first night. It seems it was a tremendous success. I don't want to know how they played, but I know their recordings, which are really fantastic. This is another story in music. There are so many. There are so many funny stories in this world. Nevertheless, this was possible because people used to practice a lot. So at this point, even an accident like this can be overcome. Uh, so I fear that we don't have many more people who want to attend. Unfortunately, I would like you to interact with me, to write something so we can interact together, but it seems that you are too shy and we have a problem. So I'm sorry not to be able to answer to your questions, and as well as to hear whether you have some ideas, what you'd like to hear, what you'd like to talk about. Uh, so I have to create these kind of things for you, and this is I am not of course I'm happy to talk to you, and I'm happy, I know that we have an attendance, but nevertheless I'd like to have a different approach to this. This must be a sort of discussion with you, sort of chat, so to speak. So in any event, we are going close to our end for today, and I would like to, in the first place, to thank all people who subscribed to my YouTube channel. I would like to invite everybody who has not done yet to do it. This channel can survive only through your subscribing, and to ask your friends to subscribe to my YouTube channel. This channel is conceived to introduce you to my work, and not only to be able to appreciate classical music and to appreciate in general classical music. Of course, I will be happy if I find out that you subscribe other channels and listen to somebody else's music. Unfortunately, repertoire here is not very much. We will increase piece by piece, but of course I cannot cover the complete repertoire. So I'm happy if you have other channels in your list, and if you go listen to somebody else's music. This is music is not a competition. We are not. I am not competing with colleagues, but we are fighting all to gain audience, because survival of what we love, classical music, with survival, is seriously threatened, and we would like to gain audience for the music we love, and we play. So subscribe, once again, subscribe to my channel, listen to my music, and hopefully you will start appreciating this music, and therefore you can listen to somebody else's, and in, increasing your knowledge in this particular repertoire, uh, which is various. Of course, I'm a pianist. I have played a lot of repertoire solo and with other people. But of course, there are repertoires I will never play. Of course, I mentioned the harpsichord repertoire, uh, old music. But this refers also to music written for other instruments, a string quartet, for instance, and or wind quintet, things I will never play. I will never be able to play. So this is an occasion to listen also to this repertoire, symphonies. I cannot, of course, I cannot upload music which is not mine for self-evident copyright reason. And so you must go look in other channels. I will gladly recommend one performance rather than another, and in the future I will do it. So you can find musicians who are in some way similar to me, so you can appreciate not only the classical music per se, which would be already great, already great, but so you can be oriented toward the tradition which is dying out. And I would like to, one of the aim of these channels is to try to preserve this tradition and continue this tradition throughout year centuries, etc. So, my friends, we are at the very end, 1.5 hours now, plus this the 30 minutes before. I'm sorry for the technical inconvenience, which cut us off for a while in the middle. And I would like to thank you, everybody, for joining us. And once again, for the last time today, subscribe to my YouTube channel, make your friends subscribe, listen to my music and to somebody else's music. One only recommendation has to be classical music. Don't forget what Plato said. And with my best wishes for a happy Easter and for a happy life, it's now really time to say goodbye. We are now finishing with live stream, with Easter Monday live stream, and looking forward to meeting you again in the next future. My friends, thank you very much again, and And bye for now. Enjoy your life and enjoy music. Thank you again.
I'm gonna